You are with Laverne, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my guest to the studio this morning. Chuck D, how are you?
I'm good, Lauren. You got it happening up in here.
I mean,
Boom.
We are so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for coming to us. So you're in the UK along with your new book, and I know that takes you back to what I think was your first love, art. You actually planned to be an artist. You were studying graphic design at university when you first met Flavor Flav, and obviously, you know, that life took another path at that point. Why have you gone back to drawing and painting?
First 25 years was my life, and then 30 years was a recording artist as my primary, and this is something that always came up out of me. And then I happened to, you know, end up running into some people, and just like many things I've done, it's like, why don't you do this? And Genesis was a fine enough company to say, hey, we want you to do your stuff over here. I wrote some stuff for Tom Morello's book, which is under the same company. And one of my heroes is Ronnie Wood.
Ah, okay.
And you know, Ronnie Wood came up with an answer of the Rolling Stones of what should I do with all my downtime? Because a lot of times, you know, I mean, being on the tours for like 35 years, you know, people are like, oh man, it must be fantastic. It is, you know, but you get 1 to 2, sometimes 3 hours on the stage and all the surrounding things. But what do you do on your downtime?
Yeah.
And if you're in the city, but so much you go to the same places over and over again, even if you're going to the clubs or the libraries, it's still, okay, you got downtime. And I heard that Ronnie Wood, when he stepped into a hotel room, he sketched it out and then sketched out the hotel. I was like, wow, that's a good idea, what I should do with downtime. And it hasn't stopped.
Fantastic. I know that art has also been an outlet for you after your dad passed away in 2015.
Yeah.
How did it help? Was it cathartic to kind of go back to that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really therapeutic to be able to, you know, do things that harked me back to my beginnings, and that happened to connect like that, you know. And I did a few other things which led me right into it. And, you know, I had the ability to go within myself and come out with something. I'm a burning furnace of creativity.
Well, exactly. And it all comes through in the book. It's called Livin Loud. And as well as your drawings, your illustrations, it has this kind of autobiographical, these essays.
Yeah, Genesis put it together. They were able to go into saved artwork over the years and just be able to do an arrangement that I was cool with. But, you know, basically my stuff is everywhere and anytime. Mm-hmm. And they were able to arrange it. I'm sorry to cut you off, Lauren.
No, absolutely not. Well, I wanted to ask about some of the cultural figures that feature, because obviously there are tons of musicians in there, but also kind of cultural, political heroes. Everyone from Paul Robeson, Nina Simone, Woody Guthrie, Marvin Gaye. Your kind of drawings of them, and I wondered about this deep sense of history that you have, deep fascination with it, and that must come from your parents. From what I've read about you growing up, it sounds like yours was that kind of house when you were a kid.
Yeah, no doubt. But then, you know, growing up in the 60s, that's all you had. You couldn't rely on other things that were outside of, I mean, you had TV, you had radio, but you had to use your gift of imagination as a portal into those worlds. And I have a gift of, I guess, total recall, where I'm able to draw and capture the moments of my past. And all those sights, sounds, stories, and styles, and, you know, resonate to this day. And at least I'm fortunate to be able to create the output that people could see it from a third person.
Yeah. And, you know, you reflect on your parents and their influence in terms of their politics. Paint me a picture of you as a kid in the 1960s. Like you say, this kind of story, this cultural history wasn't available in the mainstream.
Yeah.
How did they kind of bring that to you and give you a sense of identity and context?
Not much different than, you know, young black British youth that came up in the 60s and 70s here. Mm-hmm. You know, you had the national story, but you had to know who you are. So the knowledge of self was an imperative, that in order for you to be in the system, you had to know who you were and what you wasn't. And I had parents that were really cool to understand, you go out there and get that education and learn what being in the United States of America is about. But when you come back here, you're going to know who you are, and you're going to know what you're not, to be able to compensate in all kinds of different ways. So you'll have an advantage of knowing that, you know about all of them and they and it, but they don't know half about you. and it all came out in the wash in Public Enemy and people who I had common mind interests with.
Yeah, and obviously, your own kind of heroes depicted here.
And don't get it twisted, Lauren. These heroes are social heroes, political heroes, or whatever, musical heroes. But everybody was a step down from my people, my parents, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, those were the ultimate heroes, and everything reflected through the greatness of that prism.
Well, apparently one of the big gifts that they gave you is your dad gave you his voice, I read in the book. Yeah,
me and my brother have the kind of like voice from my father. I mean, he would be like thundering through the house, and I was a kid when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was alive. But when I used to hear him on the radio, I was like, well, he sounds nothing. I mean, he sounds similar to my pops, but my pops got the edge on him because I hear my pops all the time. So that was that.
Oh, man. So when it came to making music, it's really interesting that you mentioned the Stones. So I'm picturing you as this graphic design student.
Yeah.
And then, you have this kind of cultural, historical context interest, this hinterland that
all
you bring
time.
into it.
We love the DJs on the radio, as you guys call, just like you are so brilliantly, Lauren, a presenter. And the presenters and the curators, especially since today, people listen with their eyes a little bit too much. And their gift of imagination is usually given to them from somewhere else. But the presenters were key. And the great DJs, they brought on a record and they made you like everybody from the Spinners, who, by the way, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. The Spinners to the OJs.
The Detroit Spinners.
Yep.
The
Spinners to the OJs, to the Rolling Stones, to Jeff Beck, who just passed away. And the presenters were fantastic. And we grew from that.
And you very much took that influence into the work, because that's the thing that I think is really fascinating about what you did with Public Enemy. You bring this kind of broad view to it, where there's an aesthetic. You say in the book, you wanted to have a logo from the beginning, because you're like, right, the Rolling Stones have got the tongue. Iron Maiden have got Eddie, the kind of caricature. We need to have something. And you have this kind of there's almost like an artistic distance on it, where you're like, okay, we're a collective.
Yes.
We present ourselves this way. We, that sort of view, that strikes me as very much a kind of visual artist's view to bring to it, and then also bringing in that element of the influence of radio into how you actually rapped, how you made music.
Well, with the book, you're messing around, and you only got two dimensions. There's a third dimension, which is depth, which, you got height, width, depth. And the fourth dimension is imagination. So I try to make, when you go to the book, you open up the pages and you delve immediately into the dimension of imagination. And the whole key, especially as we going into the realm of artificial intelligence, which is queued up to make no mistakes, which to have people follow it or whatever you want to call it. It's very key to understand, although everybody has art in them, try to get art out of them, but also don't try to be perfect. Because the human being in all of us means that, you want to keep the pulse of your signature of yourself, and that's what I try to do. Of course, I could have dealt with realism or give you what a photographer would give you, but the key is that your signature of interpretation is important for people to feel the art as opposed to just seeing it.
Well, this is the thing as well, that, then you creatively, the idea that you're articulating, it never comes out perfectly. That's always the case for any artist, I think.
Keep the stretch marks.
Yeah, right. It's like, and then it becomes something that is unique, because otherwise it would be an algorithm. It would be kind of repeating itself and there would be a sense of, it kind of losing something over time. Or actually, that's why culture grows, because everybody adds their own layer to the onion.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wanted to ask about, you mentioned there about growing up and kind of how there was a parallel between growing up as a black kid in the States in the 60s and, people of colour in the UK kind of growing up. I wonder, when you came to the UK, did you know that there was a kind of framework ready that would help Public Enemy explode? Because I'm very interested in that idea of pirate radio is already here. There's this kind of underground club network that goes right back and this sort of house party
party scene that goes right back to the Windrush generation, people first arriving in the UK.
Right.
Did you guys know about that?
Yeah, well, number one, before I even came to the UK, I kind of put myself through about, 6 months of cultural study through the music magazines of that day.
Oh, yeah.
Melody Maker, Enemy, Echoes, and many other, pieces of literature and things like that, and also talking to a few people. So before Public Enemy came here on November 1st, 1987, Hammersmith Odeon, to do our thing with LL Cool J and Eric B. and Rakim and others, I made sure that summer of '87 that I prepped myself.
Yeah.
And we as Public Enemy, Flavor Flav, Professor Griff, Terminator X, that's when W's, that we came over here and we wanted to be able to meet and shake as many hands as possible and say we are here, but not for ourselves. How can we actually plant the seed for hip hop and rap music? So we knew some things about it, but we even learned more when we came here. And this was what we called the British invasion.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the rap side.
Yeah, and NME, by return, called you the greatest rock and roll band in the world.
Well, they were called the Enemy.
I'm going to play a track now. I think we better hear some music. Chuck D, stay with me. This is, of course, Rebel Without a Pause.
Yes, the rhythm, the rebel, without a pause. I'm lowering my level. We showing up in EFFECT, other known as effect. You understand what I'm saying?
Public Enemy on BBC Six Music, featuring my guest today, Chuck D, of course. Chuck talked about that kind of, broad view of how Public Enemy was going to articulate their message, what the band was going to look like, the whole kind of aesthetic around it. And I think that kind of collective element is really key to your approach. And it's something that you talk about, or is reflected in the new book, Livin Loud.
Yeah, be panoramic.
Why is that important?
Sight is important, even though, like I said earlier today, Lauren, today people listen with their eyes. Images are everything to them. I think that sometimes you should close your eyes and just listen. But that is a quality of the last century. Mm-hmm. But we understand what it is and what it was last century. But I think if you're going to see something and you're going to present something to be seen, make sure you can't unsee it. And we knew that, okay, we're going to have something that you probably never heard before, but you won't be able to take your eyes off of us. So, and that was our advantage back in the day, that we presented the four qualities, the four elements of sight, sound, story, and style. Yeah. Public Enemy. That was more than half a lifetime ago. Well, this is the thing. A big anniversary this year, 50 years since. There aren't many kind of music cultural movements that can celebrate a birthday in that way, but it's the block party that is widely credited as having given birth to hip hop coming up this summer, that big anniversary. I mentioned to you just off air, we were talking with Mike D, who was my guest a few weeks ago, about that anniversary. How do you feel about that? It's a real landmark. We started off the year, the Fight the Power documentary series, which is BBC and also partnered with PBS in the United States and also across the world, to be able to say not only what the art form, is, but how it manifested, where it came from, what are the roots, and also how it edged up against all the opposition and the political ramifications that fell out of it that it opposed to. So we started out with that, and like I said, we went about it. And big up to Laurie Buller, who actually got everybody together, and the BBC crew, Yemi, and everybody. Got
fantastic interviewees.
Fantastic. Yeah. They're amazing.
And you exec produced it.
Yeah, I felt like a fraud. But anyway, it was about, making sure we could make a concise statement about it. And one advantage to being older than the 50 years, that I wasn't awestruck to be afraid of telling the story. Mm-hmm. I'm 13 years older than hip hop. So I felt that, I saw it when it came along, and this is what I think it is. And you could attach yourself to the story, but you can't change it. I find it really fascinating. It sort of coming to that documentary series. Obviously, I saw that it was coming. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch this. And it was interesting because, I was kind of expecting actually a music documentary, and you see hip hop in the title. But interestingly, it flipped it on me because it was really a history documentary with music in it, right? Yeah, you got to tell the side of the story that makes it what it is, because I think that's an easy approach for everybody to talk it from a musical standpoint. But the music is in it, but what it's of is of a people, you know, and the migration of the people. And just like, you know, we want to study electric blues or folk or whatever, you got to study conditions and the migration of people before you talk about what comes out of them.
Absolutely. And then also, obviously, that leaves you kind of free to talk about, well, actually, the changes that came afterwards. And that it reflects that too. You know, you must see the influence of that culture absolutely everywhere, from politics, fashion, you know, art, commerce. It's everywhere now.
Well, when you study culture, you know that, you know, you don't brushstroke yourself and say, okay, yeah, this is the only art form that does it. And when you study culture, you know, fragments in all kinds of areas of society, just study it and relish it. And, you know, and that's the beauty about, you know, the UK is that it gets into arts and culture as a scientific, you know, approach to get into something that really seriously behooves an explanation. And that's why what fascinated me coming across the water is that I've heard this music, but now I'm reading 4 pages about this artist and their music. So that turned me on early on in the day. So yeah, the beautiful thing about culture is it kind of brings us together with the human spirit and knocks aside the differences. And that's diametrically opposed to governments.
When it comes to coming back to the UK, you know, you said that iconic 1987 Hammersmith gig for you guys, you know, you wanted to kind of set something off. What's it like for you now when you come back and you see, you know, British hip hop being so vibrant and exciting, and, you know, and British artists from that genre kind of coming to the States and feeding back into it all?
Well, Public Enemy was the first that encouraged that. And we encourage that artists, especially from here, the British Isles, try not to copy off of New York or the States so much. Just try to be able to carve their own identity. And I did the same, you know, I think I did the same in the art books. So I'm not trying to be like anybody. I'm influenced by everything, and it's kinetically coming through my wrist and mind.
Chuck, I could talk to you all day, but I'm not allowed. I've got to, let you go and have your next conversation. But so many heroes feature in the book, and you know, from Nina Simone to Woody Guthrie, and Prince is one of the artists that you've illustrated. I asked you to pick a track from his back catalogue, and you've gone for Musicology.
Yeah, he name checked me. Good people, good friend, highly missed. So yeah, as people are asking for Prince from the book, and Genesis will probably, you know, look about that, take care of that. We're going to play some Prince right here. Musicology.
Fantastic. Chuck D, thank you so much for joining me. Livin Loud is out now.
On the one, y'all.
Prince and Musicology, selected by my guest today, Chuck D, giving us a musical and, well, cultural education. As always, Livin Loud, the brand new art book. So grateful to have Chuck on the show.